All right, there's a lot that's happened over the past month, so I'm going to summarize everything that's happened. This is going to be a long form summary, so buckle in. So, the first thing that happened about 3 weeks ago was that the Human Health Services, HHS, is closing the Long COVID office. And this is the Office of Long COVID Research and Practice, where the director of the Long COVID Office of Research and Practice, Ian Simon, wrote this letter saying, "Dear colleagues, we are writing to let you know that the Office of Long COVID Research and Practice will be closing as part of the administration's reorganization coming this week. We are proud of what we have accomplished together in advancing understanding, resources, and support for people living with long COVID. Over the last 3+ years, we have built meaningful connections and fruitful collaborations across the federal landscape to support this work. While our office is closing, we hope that the work we have been dedicated to will continue in some form. Updates will be shared as they become available. Thank you for your collaboration and commitment." Just as the article mentions, this move is both expected and unexpected, predominantly because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had said that he was going to focus on chronic diseases, and we were assuming that chronic diseases were going to be like long COVID as one of those chronic diseases, but it seems like his definition of chronic disease is going to be focused around things like autism, which is not a disease. It is a predisposition, it has a genetic component, and it is not a disease. And then also to underpin, this office hasn't been existing for a very long time. It started in 2023, so it is closing down after only 2 years. Well, almost 3 years. The next major move is that the government is now saying that the pandemic is officially over, that the NIH is going to start cutting COVID 19 research because of this rationale. And this also means that there are going to be grant terminations, halting research on improving vaccinations and preventing future pandemics. Where the rationale of the Trump administration comes from them saying that these grants linked to COVID 19 are a waste of money because the pandemic is over, which is not true, it's ongoing. All we ended was the public health emergency, which provided funding and support to people, and also the World Health Organization ended the public health emergency of international concern, saying that they failed to contain COVID, that it is now everywhere. That is not saying that the COVID is no longer a pandemic, it is saying that they failed and then that the government was no longer going to support us. Where the Department of Human Health and Services, HHS, sent science an email saying that the COVID 19 pandemic is over and HHS will no longer waste billions of taxpayer dollars responding to a non existent pandemic that Americans moved on from years ago. So, again, pandemic is ongoing. It is still here. People are still getting infected with COVID every single day. People are still developing long COVID every single day. And while it might be true that many Americans have moved on for this, many Americans still have not because they can't, because they are constantly getting sick, and this is then developing in chronic disease. Where again, every single COVID infection is going to leave you weaker than you first were when you encountered the virus. It's going to leave you with heart damage, is going to infiltrate your brain, is going to damage the blood vessel walls, it's going to mess with your GI tract, it's going to mess with your kidneys, your liver. It could infiltrate your neurons and cause all sorts of weird issues like tinnitus, the ringing in your ears, to things like zaps all across your body, or just even leg and muscle weakness, so not being able to use your legs as you once were. Some other functions that were cut was the Antiviral Drug Discovery Centers for Pathogens of Pandemic Concern, where they were allocated $577 million to develop new drugs to treat COVID 19. And it was also aimed to develop antivirals for other viruses like Rift Valley fever, Ebola, Marburg, yellow fever, dengue, and Zika, to name a few. Measles was also in that list. Additionally, grants were terminated that were meant to develop improved COVID 19 vaccines and also to address long COVID. And in addition to all of this, science has separately learned that at least 2 of the 8 federally funded Serological Sciences Center of Excellence were terminated. So these were networks that were set up to study the immune responses to COVID 19, which leads to its transmission between people, and also can be used for things like picking out good vaccines and how it relates to future variants, how current immune histories of individual people that have been vaccinated or animals that have been vaccinated multiple times or have been infected multiple times, what their serologic profile is, what their immune profile is against interacting with future variants. This helps us to predict how much immune evasion there has been. So these are another big hit as well. But 3 days later, from March 25th over to March 28th, we learned that some of the Recover Long COVID pathobiology grants were restored. So we had a little bit of good news there. And this was a little bit of a surprising win because of, as we mentioned earlier, the closing of the Long COVID Research and Practice Office, and additionally, that had terminated the Federal Advisory Committee on Long COVID, who, among other things, had come up with a definition for what Long COVID is, including both adults and children, and sort of subgrouping it into an infection associated chronic condition. 1 day later, we learned that Peter Marks was forced to resign from the FDA. This is someone that has been consistently advocating for vaccine access to all people and making sure that we're doing the best possible things for everyone. On Friday, Peter Marks was given an ultimatum: either be fired or resign. And in his resignation letter, he wrote, "It has become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the Secretary," meaning RFK Jr., "but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies." And then 1 day later, the Trump administration announced the rescinding of the final scientific integrity policy of the NIH. So, what does that mean? What does that entail? So, like other agencies, the NIH revised its scientific integrity policy in response to a Biden administration presidential memorandum, which created a process involving public input and cross-agency discussion to shape policies that it was trying to implement and then enforce. So in updating its policy, the NIH took the welcome step of soliciting public comments on a draft before releasing its final policy in late 2024, and then it published announcements of both the comment period and the final policy in the Federal Registrar. This is the publication that makes it easier for people to understand and participate in government decision making. So this is literally just a transparency process. So they have to announce, this is what we're doing. They're going to solicit public feedback. People are going to be able to comment on it. And then once they comment on it and review those comments, then they have the public meetings where they can also have people comment at the public meetings. And then they review everything there with all the information that's being presented to them and the public's opinions on things. And then from there, they integrate this into their policy decision making. They make those policy decisions, they publish them, and then that's the whole process. So what does the rescinding of this policy mean? Well, it could mean that there's going to be a lot of closed door meetings where we're not given public access to what was discussed in those meetings. It could mean that there are unilateral decisions that are made so that they'll just say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, but we won't be able to make any comment on it, at least in terms of commenting directly to the decision makers. And ultimately, it just takes transparency out of the process. It makes it opaque. Later in early April, we learned that Doge is killing NIOSH, which is the one that does the certifications for N95 masks, where around 873 staff are expected to be cut from NIOSH. And I recall that that's like 90% of their workforce, so only about 10% of the agency is left over. And NIOSH doesn't only certify masks, but they also investigate outbreaks and certify like respirators, like I talked about. So this is going to impact predominantly healthcare workers, firefighters, construction workers, and other people that will just get sick and die due to faulty face masks or other things like that. So the first question is like, what will the manufacturers do with this NIOSH not checking certifications anymore, not sending out workers to always check on the mask manufacturers? Will they uphold quality? This will, I guess, be dependent on their international markets, if they're going to be trying to make sure that the quality is sustained for those, or if they're going to cut back on quality to save costs in our current uncertain economic times. And then the quality of the masks could degrade. That's just something we'll have to wait and see. I suspect that they will try to maintain quality. That's my guess. I think that we won't have issues there. But it's now going to be in the hands of manufacturers here in the States and companies here in the States. So it's not a good thing. And then to give a list of what NIOSH actually does outside of just certification of respirators. So they do research into various health and safety hazards and set standards for OSHA. They've contributed with World Trade Center and nuclear veterans. They do heat guidelines, heat-related illnesses and death. They work with firefighters, they perform investigations actively, they work with mine safety, child labor laws, and then educational resource centers. Now, in a sliver of good news, the World Health Organization member countries agreed on a draft pandemic treaty to try and avoid COVID 19 mistakes. So, the US pulled out of the World Health Organization, and that's sort of why this was able to actually be achieved now, is because the US has consistently been blocking it, blocking it, blocking it, blocking it, blocking it. And why are we blocking it? Because we're saying, oh, intellectual property rights for the U.S., blah blah blah. But what happened, and part of the issue within our current COVID pandemic, is that the US developed these great vaccines, and then we developed them, we produced them, but then we did not distribute them to other countries. Some countries still haven't been able to get their first round of vaccines, even though it's been in existence for quite a while now. Since I believe 2021, we've had our COVID vaccines for the mRNA. And other countries haven't been able to get access to this because we weren't distributing them. We weren't sending them to the World Health Organization to then distribute equally to other countries. So that's what this draft pandemic treaty is around, where the draft treaty notably includes a provision to guarantee that countries share critical virus samples received through any results in testing, and then also medicines and vaccines, among other participating member countries, with the World Health Organization to hold up to 20% of such products to ensure poorer countries get supplies, because again, that was the big issue. And the US was saying, oh, this will violate our international patent rights, or our patent rights, intellectual property patent rights. And that ended up hurting people, like literally people died because they couldn't get access to these vaccines. And then more recently, we used to have a COVID testing and vaccination website that gave a lot of information to people. The Trump administration decided to rewrite this website to talk about the true origins of the COVID-19. And let's just go through this nonsense. So they say the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. So this is them talking about the fact that it is a novel coronavirus, meaning that it's new. It was not seen before. This is a complete misunderstanding of what a novel virus means. It's not saying that it's not found in nature, because it was. When you sequence bat genomics from around that area, and then you compare it to the original COVID virus, because there were actually two. There was an L strain and an S strain, and I believe it was the S strain that ended up being the one that first started breaking out of China, of the Wuhan province. And they found, when you run these sequences together, they have like a 98% overlap. So there's only a little bit of change between the virus that was sequenced in the original strain of COVID-19 versus what was currently sequenced in bats for the coronavirus, for the beta coronavirus. And because it's so small, it's literally just from zoonotic spillover. And that's what it means. And the novel part of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, is that it is a new virus to interact with people in this way, and it has unique characteristics. So they're just sort of manipulating what that means in incorrect manner. They're saying that data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. That's not true. Again, for several months prior to the official start of the COVID-19 outbreak, there was an L strain of coronavirus that was circulating amongst humans in the region. And then the S strain was also introduced. And then the S strain was what first started spreading, but then the L strain actually took over and dominated after that. So again, you have multiple early coronavirus strains from spillover into the environment, which sort of breaks this whole lab leak thing, because that would just be one virus, not multiple viruses. And then it's showing that there's this back and forth between the animals and the people, and which we know there is because the market was selling bats and selling bat fecal matter, guano, and also there was the whole reason that the Wuhan lab was set up in the location it was set up is because there was a bat population very close by to the lab that they were studying. The next one right here is that Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab. So this is SARS coronavirus. which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research, gene altering, and organism supercharging at inadequate biosafety levels. Again, false. They have adequate biosafety level controls there. If you're doing any gain-of-function research, I'm pretty sure you have to have BSL-4 certifications and have that standardized. And also, the US was funding that lab as well. So it's not necessarily a Chinese lab. There was international support in that research lab. And not only that, but like gain of function research, you're sort of doing minor tweaks to see what would um, help a virus transition to a zoonotic type spillover. And what they were doing was nowhere near to what actually was released from everything that was shown and released to us. So again, the biosafety level is completely fine. They have a history of conducting gain of function research there. That's normal. We do this all over the world, all over the country, our country as well as what I'm talking about in the US. This is not surprising. This is not something that's like, God. Next, the Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with COVID like symptoms in the fall of 2019, months before COVID 19 was discovered at the wet market. Um, Again, COVID like symptoms, unless they have an actual diagnosis with a PCR testing to show it was coronavirus, there's this conflation that they like to use. Oh, it's a flu like illness. So the COVID is just like the flu, which is not at all. COVID is much, much worse than the flu. Um, but they're trying to play that into COVID like symptoms. Well, COVID like symptoms are basically our flu like symptoms, which is like fever, trouble breathing, things like that. Those are things that happen with any severe respiratory illness. Not to say that COVID is a respiratory illness, it is a full systemic illness. It impacts every system. And then by nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but it hasn't. There's tons and tons and tons of evidence. I'll probably go back into this. I was in university and I did a whole thing on this when I was looking into it right at the start of the pandemic. I was in a biosensors class, so I developed a biosensor that targeted the spike protein. And in my biosensor, I was doing a lot of research into this initial thing, and there's lots and lots and lots of evidence that showed that it was a zoonotic spillover event. This whole thing right here, I'll have to find out where those bat caves are, because the whole point is that there are bat caves that are much closer to this. So this is just a coincidental finding. Oh, there's 7.5 miles between the Hunan Seafood Market and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Like, so fucking what? Like, the whole reason it was set up here is to be close to those bat caves, to make that easy. And also, look how densely populated everything is. Like, it's just a coincidence. It's not anything more than that. And again, so you'll look at this and they'll say all these things, but there's no citations. There's nothing, it's all just hearsay. They don't have anything to support. And then they go into like attacking Andrew Cuomo, saying that there is they're literally spilling COVID misinformation in this, but they're just like talking nonsense. But like, again, where's the direct evidence that they're presenting for these things? They're presenting a YouTube video. And what is this? This is a House oversight report, which is just a bunch of fucking politicians. This is not an actual scientific report. But all this stuff that they're saying and citing, you'll see that it has no actual citations. It doesn't say like, oh, link back to this article, link back to this like scientific article is what I'm saying, not a journalistic report, but a scientific article. There's nothing to support this. They have a little picture of a map. This is just like what he did with the hurricane, being like, oh, this is the path it'll take. Like, oh, look, there's 2 points. We connected a line between them. This is the same shit. Same shit. And then to sort of tie everything together, there is an update on the NSF's priorities, the National Science Foundation. So I'd like to scroll down to this part right here. Are you still funding research on misinformation, disinformation? And then, per the presidential action announced January 20th, 2025, NSF will not prioritize research proposals that engage in or facilitate any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen. NSF will not support research with the goal of combating misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation that could be used to infringe on the constitutionally protected speech of American citizens across the U.S. in a manner that advances a preferred narrative about significant matters of public debate. So this is them just saying, like, nope, we're not going to do that, where the government is just explicitly going in and saying, hey, we don't care about misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. If there are bad actors trying to sway people one way or the other, we don't care about what the truth is. We just care about what our truth is. And this is sort of what's been painted through all of these different actions that we discussed today. So, not a great day for science, not a great day and time for America, but we log it all so that when they try and rewrite websites like this one over here, we can say that, hey, this happened.